I think we differ sometimes less than we are being made to believe. And the more that we buy into hate and division, and they're over there are crazy and evil, and if we listen to them, our world's going to fall apart. If we keep buying into that, what's being sold to us, then they really are going to be running our insides. They're going to be running our nervous system, both individually and collectively. And what we want right now is to be able to go, wait, let's hold our own individually and collectively as a group, learn to securely relate and listen as we start to think of solutions. Instead of focusing on the solutions first, your answer is wrong, mine's right. It's like, how do we relate first, just like in a relationship? How do we get to secure relating place and then be able to listen more? And one of the things we have to do is recognize how much we're being manipulated and incited to not be in our higher, wiser self, and that we really can then own our own, tolerate that discomfort, and not so easily be manipulated into that kind of thinking that is going to lead us nowhere. I mean, we can see it's not getting better. And the one way we can get better, I think, is that that's our message, right? So securely relating, learn how to do that so that we quit being so divided and we quit being so polarized.
Welcome to Therapist Uncensored. Building on decades of professional experience, this podcast tackles neurobiology, modern attachment, and more in an honest way that's helpful in healing humans. Your session begins now with Dr. Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Therapist Uncensored. Before we jump in, just want to make an announcement. If you are longtime listeners, or even if you're fairly new, and you feel like you've gained from all the important material you've been listening to, we hope you will be excited by our upcoming book, Secure Relating, Holding Your Own in an Insecure World. It comes out through HarperCollins on April 30th, and I know y'all can imagine Sue and I are super excited and relieved. So in this book, Sue and I discuss our framework, which integrates some of the most important aspects of modern attachment and neuroscience, but in a way that makes it easy to understand and really easy to use in your everyday life. So just like on Therapist Uncensored, our goal is to help you build secure and grounded relationships with your closest people, whether that's your partner, your child, your best friend, your coworker. We have many primary relationships out there in the world that are important to us, and we want to be part of helping build deep, lasting relationships. We also have another goal in our book, and that is to be part of shifting our collective conversation out there, especially right now, from mistrust, divisiveness, and polarization towards more secure ways of relating with one another, something that we need more now than ever. So if you've been listening to our podcast, we know that you want that too. And we're hoping that we can all join together to really help add to this collective conversation, which is one reason really hope you guys can help spread the news of our book far and wide. And another thing is that we hope our book sounds like a conversation with us rather than just an academic read. But it will give you a deep dive into fresh and modern views on attachment, how culture and systems impact all of us, and ways to build secure relational skills both inside and outside of therapy. You can purchase this book at your local bookstore or find it at securerelatingbook.com. You can jump there or even just to Therapist Uncensored and find out ways to get a signed copy if you are interested in that.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Therapist Uncensored. I'm sitting here with you, Sue, and we're going to do an episode together. It's been too long. I'm excited to be doing one with you and I.
I know. It's really fun. And you're right. It's been too long. It's not been too long. It's just been long, and we're happy to be together. We're going to actually be doing this for a couple of weeks, and I'm excited about that too, because we want to really dig into applying this material in a number of ways. Today, we're going to take a wider focus and use neuroscience and our field of attachment and trauma, but yet look at culture and society and the trouble that we're in the world. And then in the episodes to come, we'll do a narrow lens, and we're going to look more intrapsychically at the individual and how to use the material and heal and grow inside ourselves and with each other.
And, I think even as you mentioned today, we're going to take the wider lens, and it's hard to talk about the trouble in the world. It sounds so ominous and I don't know, I guess dramatic, but it's true. We're in an emotional social crisis right now. And we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it, and we need to talk about what's happening. For me, the more I feel like I understand it, it's just like in relationships. I think the more we understand what's going on inside of us and around us, the more we feel like we can deal with it.
So what is happening?
Oh, it's not happening. I feel like I'm kind of dreading this coming year. I think a lot of people are, with the just high level of divisive political talk, the polarization. We still have ongoing COVID happening around us. The issue of just this huge collective mistrust that we're experiencing. You can't look at your phone, you can't look at anything without hearing accusations or trouble or trauma. And it's really overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just getting overwhelmed and wanting to check out. You know what I mean? Just it's like it's too much, right? And I like the idea though of applying what we know with trauma to what's happening. That when we get stressed, we do predictable things. And as a culture, you're seeing a lot of dissociation, disconnection, checking out, getting overwhelmed, or the other side, right? Fight. Whereas people are, oh my gosh, like armoring up, blaming one another in that really primitive black and white thinking of good guy, bad guy. Those are all signs of amygdala activation, not kind of mature prefrontal cortex considered reflective thought.
Right. We talk so much about the protective connection system. And if we just look at ourselves as a collective unit, right? And not just this is my country and your country, but as a collective, or my state and your state and my party or your party. If we look at ourselves as one collective unit through neuroception, like that we are picking up vibes from each other, we're picking up information, and we're responding all the time. We like to talk about it as like this sort of collective hijack. Our amygdala is really activated right now, all of us. And I feel like if we can unify around that thought, it would be really helpful. Because I think the more we see ourselves together experiencing something instead of believing that people outside of us are causing all the crap that's happening inside of us, right? Just like in a relationship, the more we believe our partner or our child is activating us and we try to control them in order for us to feel better, it just doesn't work. And the more that we can feel like, oh, wait, if I can really look at myself and connect with my partner or child, the whole system gets better. We know that works. And that has to be that way as a collective society.
Yeah, that's so true. In our book, the whole book starts with this silly little scenario about a bug. And I don't know if it's going to translate, but basically, there's something outside. And at first, you're really interested in it. It's really cool. But then it does something and startles you, and you end up killing it. This it's a little scenario, meaning that initially we are interested and connected, but then when our threat response goes off, all of a sudden we perceive what's outside of us differently, and then justify our horrible actions, like you're saying, pointing, it's the bug, it's the bug, it's the bug, rather than being aware that no, I just had an internal state changed, which changed my story about the bug, which then justified my murdering the bug. It's just a different way of saying what you're saying, which is our brains are built to, when we regress into primitive thinking, which is what you're seeing all around you, especially in your leaders. If you think about mature relating versus immature relating, and name calling, snide comments, using humiliation, whichever side is doing that, that is not what we would be teaching our children to do, right? We're teaching people to use their whole mind and to be reflective and to be empathic. And how is it that we're able to tolerate this in our leaders? Again, all across the board, this isn't a politicized it doesn't have to be a politicized conversation. These are all just signs, as you said, of this amygdala hijack, and we're functioning from our insecure, kind of defended protective state, just like you said.
Exactly. And it's interesting because I'm thinking of myself, and we've spoken about this on the podcast, but I'm bringing it back in today. It seems really relevant. And that is, I think for a while I was blaming things on leaders, like seeing them as the cause of this collective dysregulation. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's some intentional hyperactivation happening, techniques that are being used to.
Oh, yeah, they're using our fear to gain ground. We're easier to control if we're afraid.
Well, and it's especially by leaders across the world who rely on more of an authoritarian kind of leadership. In other words, I'm going to be the one to hierarchically control you. Why do we let anybody do that? I mean, sensibly, our sensible self wouldn't want that.
Well, part of it is they're not saying, "I want to control you." They're saying, "The world is really terrible. You're being attacked, and I'm your solution. So jump on my raft." And then also there's conditions to be on the raft. You have to really follow in line. And once you get on that raft, you're going to hang on for dear life because that is where the safety is.
No, that's true. It's like it makes sense why we would want to follow that. I guess that's the part of what I want to kind of self-reflect on, and hopefully help others self-reflect on, is what is my part in that and what is my solution in that, right? I am as guilty as anyone as hanging my fist in the air and really blaming and getting so dysregulated and activated by leadership out there causing this. And I think that has contributed to me not owning my own stuff about this and looking at how I can make a difference and why I was so easily activated. Like, why was I so easily activated in the first place to feel hate and anger and blame one side against the other? And I think it's because we've had so much collective fear and trauma in our bodies happening to us through the COVID, through some of the realization, through the horrible racial violence that's happened out there. I mean, it really is hard to feel.
It's happening.
Well, of course, I guess I was thinking my continuum of when it was happening. Absolutely, it's still happening. Thank you for that correction. But I mean, just how activated and uncertain and fearful my body felt. Like I could feel so shaken up and uncertain and fearful just in general. And because I feel that way, then I am looking to get angry, because if I can get angry, I no longer feel, just like in a relationship, if I get really pissed, I no longer feel that vulnerable feeling or that helplessness. And now I'm angry, and now I think I'm powerful as crap now. And yet what was really going on is that inside I felt really, and I still feel really helpless in some ways.
I love what you're saying. So hold that about going in individually. And you and I have talked about this a lot about how it's hard to be able to do both. So I actually just had the idea of you stick with that. Don't let me sway you. And then I'll speak for the collective, because in every breath, it's like, as you're saying, I need to go inward and look at myself. I totally agree. And if I don't, I'm going to not be useful to anybody else either. It's a form of dissociation. It's a disconnection. And that's all we can do. And then we're not helpful. We're not doing anything if we're not regulating ourselves. And at the same time, I guess what I wanted to say is, yeah, well, have the man get his foot off my neck or, you know what I'm saying? That like, it's actually still happening so much and it's so violent and in some ways so much worse, whether it be the racial violence, whether it be trans folks being attacked. So even though I think you're totally right, we have to go inward and look inward. I think at the same time we can say, and these threats aren't inward. Like, there really is a bug. There really is the thing to point to that is actually threatening and harmful. So how do we do both around taking personal responsibility and really trying to do what we can in our tiny little worlds, and also not forgetting and not really naming and recognizing the cultural violence that is also causing all of our dysregulation?
I love that clarity. And I think part of doing the individual is not to say, oh, well, my calming down is the whole answer, because I don't believe that, or my activation is the cause. But to be able to even own and look at the painful systemic stuff, right? I have to get a hold of myself. Because when I was in the activated, rageful anger, I wasn't helpful to the systemic issues. Like I wasn't part of anything except for expressing, it's almost my own privilege to be in rage, right? instead of like, and I guess I'm thinking as a collective society, like I can't be helpful unless I can also have that part of my higher thinking that could come in.
And I want to tell the story of we've actually been to 2 conferences recently that will, I think, exemplify some of what you're saying. And both of them, we did a deep dive in looking at some of our traditional models and really trying to open up and, be more inclusive in liberation psychology and things like that. And in some circumstances, literally there were people yelling, and there was a very much of a gotcha culture, and I felt like it was like a policing for purity, whichever side, this doesn't even matter, whichever side. And even talking in dualities like that, that's something we're trying to get away from, right? So that as people start doing camps and tribes and separate teams or whatever, and against each other, opponents, if it, even having an opponent, that just like you said, we would get activated and be offended, and it makes you less effective. Versus when we would be in these experiences that would start with things like, I've been harmed and I've harmed. Like holding this tension that we're talking about in the middle of being both a perpetrator and a victim, doing it all and kind of depending on what lens that we're putting on, that made it safer for everybody to both confess and to explore and to look at how we're continuing to perpetrate parts of these problems, but then also to feel the pain of the damage that's been done, whether that be culturally or whether that be just our own developmental traumas.
Oh, that's so true. And like when you say the part of feeling the pain, that is the most important part of dealing with trauma, isn't it? Is like we can live in like our protective parts or preventative parts where we don't let it in, or our reactive parts or our wounded parts. And all of those are hugely important elements to kind of look more deeply at rather than just live in, to be aware of. And I love that example because you asked me to hold the personal, so I'm going to hold the personal a little bit. So in the personal, in that meeting, so if I'm self-acknowledging here that I have had my fist up and angry, and that really didn't help me. It helped me stay dysregulated. And honestly, I fed right in to when, I mean, I do believe there's this collective hijacking happening. I do believe that we are being incited into polarization and division. Even when I said I can't just look at the leaders, I do think we're being incited. We'll get more into that. But if I really look at myself, even in that situation where people were yelling at one another, and it activated my anger. I remember sitting there, and what I wanted to do was walk out and leave. And I'm like, I don't want. I was so mad. I wanted to walk out and just blah, blah, blah. And I remember telling myself, I can tolerate this discomfort, and I need to learn to tolerate this discomfort. If I just walk out of here, and I had to really do active work because what I wanted to do was judge them and walk out, and I didn't. And I really stayed and just like, oh my gosh, I have experienced such little discomfort in my real life, right? In my privilege. I don't mean
Relatively
relatively speaking,
speaking.
I've had lots of personal traumas. I would not at all be one to say I've had the easiest of lives, but I still comparatively have such a privileged life. It's ridiculous. And I've had to experience so much less discomfort than most of the world. And I thought, what, I'm going to walk out of my self-righteous anger and not sit in here and feel the pain. And the yelling that was happening was pain. It was trauma.
It was clean pain.
Oh, it was trauma on both sides. And they were feeling it so deeply that they turned rageful towards one another. And I thought, if I walk out because I can't tolerate that, then I'm a little hypocrite of what I'm trying to promote. And so I remember doing exercises in there and slowing myself down. And as I did and stayed in, that leveled off, and different people then stood up and said things in a way that was more like, I need you to hear my pain in a way. And I was able to hear it. If I'd have walked out, I wouldn't have heard so much of the wonderful conversation that was to be remained. It would have been the self-satisfying stomp out that would have done me no good. And so I think that's my personal part of the collective, is like, I had to sit there and go, I can handle this discomfort. I can.
Do you remember what you did when you said that you used some tools to hang in there?
I took a deep breath in. I did a little box breathing that we talked about. And then I remember I literally said to myself, you can handle this discomfort. You are completely strong enough. This is hard. This is hard for so many people in this room. These people yelling are in pain. I'm in pain. And we are actually collectively here as a group. And I know that. And so I just let myself like talk to my insides and say, this is hard. You're going to be okay. And you can stay here. And it's your job to. It is your responsibility.
Yeah. One of the things I hear in that too is that we can do this together.
Yes.
Because all the pain that we're talking about, it is too much for any one person. And this is some of our messaging on our podcast and in the book around collective pain has to be healed collectively. We don't have a choice. And I want to get back to something that you said about the storming out and how good it would feel on one level about the self satisfaction and this problem with certainty. And again, certainty is just sort of an interesting thing, right? Like, you know how there's this the woke virus, they're calling it. Like I want to say that there's a certainty virus and that it is contagious because it's part of how you answer someone else's certainty. And really staying in a place of certainty is actually, even though it feels really good and things are settled and I'm done and there's nothing you can say to convince me, it's biologically appealing. It feels good. It's even seductive. But if we hang out there and we stay there, it's actually it is our lower brain functioning. It is a more primitive state that when you're actually relating securely, when we're in our higher mind, which is where you were fighting to get to and stay in when you were talking to yourself, it wasn't easy. But when we're in that place, we're not in certainty. We might have clarity. That's okay to have clarity, but we are able to like, it could be this. We could have doubt. We can perspective take. We can wonder. We don't have to be closed minded and absolute about things, that there is a way that we can be influenced. We also can influence. That's the language of secure relating or of mature relating or of ventral vagal relating, whatever language we want to use, that you and I are promoting for us, just like what you said. It was a beautiful example of fighting, like literally fighting our biological urge to go to this easy, kind of lazier, that's not probably the best word, but automated way of relating.
Yeah, that's a better word. I really am glad you shifted it because my stomping out, I guess somebody could say would be lazy, but it was automated. I wanted to flee. I had my face was flush. My heart rate was going up. There was every reason physiologically that I should get up and storm out of that room because
Yeah, you don't have to put up with this. You're paying for this. This is a
well,
conference.
but I guess even what I was saying, even on a more primitive level, that my body was receiving every physiological cue, my heart rate, everything that I needed to flee. Like it was not even like my rational mind was going to give me the reason, but my body wanted to flee. It's tuning into that activity in my body. There was every reason for me to walk out because all my body senses were communicating that I was in danger. And us overrating that primitive thing is secure relating. Like I had to go, we're in this together. And you know what was so beautiful about my staying? It was hard. I was actually a little traumatized about it. It took me, it's taken me time and time. I mean,
Oh yeah, you and I, we're still processing it.
it's true. I regretted using the word traumatized because I don't want to throw that out. But I guess it is hitting my sense of internal trauma, conflict in a room, et cetera, but also collectively. And what was so powerful about that is that the fighting was, we have this huge conflict right now in the world that involving beliefs around Israel and Palestine, right? And I'm not going to touch that in this conversation.
See, you're afraid to though, right?
There's truth to that. We're going to get into another one. But what I was responding to that, oh, actually, you're picking up my language. I don't even want to touch that. You're right. That was you picking up my language of fear. But the point that I was feeling is that you can read about this conflict. You can watch it on TV. You can feel really opinionated and certain about your opinion. But my sitting there staying and hearing people's pain, and it was both sides of the same, they were on opposite sides, but they were, and these are therapists talking to each other, right?
It was two men.
Yeah, but they were,
There was something about that too, about two men
right.
standing and screaming at each other.
But they were so full of pain,
Yeah.
and they were so full of their own collective traumas.
And they were speaking for so much more than themselves. This was
Oh,
not a personal
yes.
thing. They were
No.
holding populations that they were speaking for.
And so my sitting there and hearing it and staying in there, and then we all did come together, as much as we could, we did come together, but it was really hard. It's like we have to tolerate that level of pain to be able to come in together to really be able to have some kind of relational solution, right? Like if we don't resolve things through some kind of relational connection, and I'm not trying to solve that one, like that's not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to be, oh, if we all could just kumbaya and talk together, everything would be fine. Well, I am a little that delusional, but I'm not,
No,
you
here's what
know.
I hear you saying is you're saying we have to attend to our neurobiology. I mean, that's a geeky way of saying it. Another example of that particular thing is, well, it might be too embedded, but something was happening where that people would speak. Some certain people had mics that were kind of dispersed in the crowd, and they would speak up, and so everybody would be alarmed and look around because, again, because of our biology, when something startles you, it is a threat. You have a orienting response. And yet that can get interpreted that, oh, we didn't like what they said, or we didn't like the voice that was speaking, or that we didn't, which may at some level also be true, but we can't get there until there's kind of the holding of the biology of like, okay, let's get the safety enough so that we can explore, oh, it might be this, or oh, it might be that.
Right. There was a disembodied voice coming from, not only that, coming from our flanks, which of course in our biology,
Oh, yeah.
something coming from our flank behind us and disembodied, that should alarm bell me. I should be looking forward and be disoriented.
And then we wanted to identify who's speaking, where is that what's happening. It was a normal, healthy biological response.
And then once I kind of go, oh, okay, this is part of the system. And once I understood, so kind of getting back to the whole, like, how do we as individuals, but this podcast is a collective podcast also, as a society, recognize that we are in a hyper protective activated state together. I mean, I'm not saying every single person, but most individuals that are out there and paying attention are feeling divisive. You're not going to run up to people and say, hey, I kind of feels like we're a little polarized and divided right now. And somebody's going to look at you and go, what? Not many people, and I would say probably not very many of our listeners are going to feel that. They're going to be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's because we're feeling that fear in our body, and we're feeling the divisiveness, and we're feeling the lack of belonging and the lack of connection and the lack of safety. And it really is taking a toll on our mental health, our physical health, and the substantive of our country and world.
Right. And because one of the things we're robbed of when we're kind of, as you're saying it, and we end up just that begins to feel normal, where that we armor up and we dig in and we get on our raft and we hold there. But one of the things that robs us of is the beauty of vulnerability. From vulnerability comes intimacy. And so if we're all armored and clinging to and it's so easy, by the way, when I'm describing this, I'm thinking of like the other side. But what you're inviting us to do is think about the ways in which that we are armored up. Think about the way in which we're clinging to ideas and like staying within a group, whether it be a party. Let's just think of it as a political party that we know what the talking points are. We know what the lines are supposed to be. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of nuance necessarily, depending again on the circles that you run in. But in other words, it gets tighter and tighter. And if you diverge, and if you're like, well, I'm a little bit of this and a little bit of that, that's seen as impure, or that's seen as, threatening to the rest of the raft. The vulnerability part, though, is there's so much health in that ventral vagal connected vulnerability. And one of the things we're not aware that is happening is that we're living without this connection. Esther Perel talks about AI being artificial intimacy, which I really resonated with around so many things. That's going to be a whole other conversation. But like you said, that we're lonely and we're disconnected. And in the COVID in particular, everybody talks about the loneliness, but really, ultimately, it ended up being that we felt betrayed. And so kind of on our own. And by being on our own, we just like, okay, fine, I'm on my own. But there's a hardness that comes with that. So both on one hand, we're now aggravating the problem because we're hard, which is going to invite hardness, but we're also missing the health and the healing that comes with vulnerability and that comes with intimacy. So it's really like a two-legged punch. Oh, I'm messing up my metaphor, but you know what I mean? It's a two-pronged problem. I don't know.
And if we're not aware that we're having that harsher side, then we're inviting the harshness towards us, right?
Yeah, it just feels normal.
Right. And so then we
Like
get
those idiots over there.
and then we get the harshness coming back at us, right? And then we see their harshness, their squinty eyes, and we're like, God, And so then through neuroception, we're perpetuating the ripples of insecurity without even meaning to, because what we're fighting for most of the time, no matter even which side you're on, most of us are trying to fight for what we think is good in the world. I mean, we're trying to fight for what we believe is best for us, and yet what we're activating is our most limited, worst selves to be able to take that in, and we don't even recognize it. And if we don't talk about it, I think we're coming back to trauma. What we know as therapists that heals trauma more than anything is to be able to talk about the pain and the trauma in a way, but talk about it safely, right?
Safety,
Right.
safely in relationship.
And if we don't help that, right, then we continue to perpetuate that. And if we aren't even aware of our own cutoff, like for example, talking about the trauma of COVID, and how much do we, either as individuals or as therapists or as clients, do we let ourselves really contemplate all that's gotten shaken up in our nervous system and in our families and in our belief about our countries? If we don't actually let ourselves digest that and talk about the hard topics, then we don't realize how disconnected we've gotten. And now we don't have any desire to connect to people socially, or a lot less. We've shrunk in our desire. One of the effects of COVID is that there's a lot more social anxiety and less desire to connect socially. And yet we don't even recognize that as trauma. We don't recognize that that's been a new normal because it's reconnected to the disconnection that we've been experiencing in the world. And now there's more social anxiety about just even picking up a phone. A lot of people report a lot more nervousness in ways that they didn't experience before COVID.
Well, nervousness or just lack of interest.
Yes.
Right? I don't want anybody to pick up the phone. Please, God, let it go to voicemail and let me leave a voicemail because I don't want to talk to a real person. Or better yet, let me just text you. Give me a thumbs up and we're done.
That's such a good way to say. Yeah, it's lack of interest.
I'm not even feeling it as anxiety.
Oh, that's such a good point, Sue.
Which, going back to our book and our model, it means that I've slid blue and I'm zipped up and I think I'm fine. And the problem is out there. And that is not a secure place. That is not an intimate place. That is not a place of collaboration and healing and all the things that you're talking about. And I also thought, Anne, as you were saying that in order to really look at our own disconnection and our own isolation and our own pain, it does require vulnerability, i.e. safety.
Yes. And that's not easy to find. Like you even mentioned when I was mentioning that topic that I was like, and I'm not going to go into it. The idea of feeling safety, that I'm going to say something that's going to hit somebody.
Be attacked.
And I will be attacked rather than, somebody tapping in and can we talk, which actually recently happened where somebody tapped us in a very caring way and said, you said something, can we talk? It was so refreshing.
That's right. And we're going to do a whole thing on that, actually.
Right, because they heard something. They said, we want to talk to you about some things that you said. Would you have a conversation with us? And I was like, oh my God, that was so securely relating to say, we want to hear. What did we say? What did we let be said? What is hitting your nervous system?
There are a lot of things in life that you can and should compromise on, but mental health care is not one of them. Rather than thinking it's impossible to find a psychiatrist near you, or an available therapist that takes your insurance, or a primary care physician with openings, check out ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and a website where you can search and compare hundreds of types of highly rated in-network doctors, including mental health providers, and instantly book appointments with them online. You can search by location, availability, and insurance. So literally no compromises here because you've got more options than you would have ever imagined. You can find mental health providers who offer in-person appointments, virtual visits, or both, whatever works for you. The insurance they take and their fees are transparent. They're listed right there. Most importantly, you can get real patient reviews to get a feel for the person before you commit to setting that first appointment. And here's the thing. The typical wait time you see a mental health provider booked on ZocDoc is just 4 days. That's it. Sometimes you can even score same-day appointments. Remember, it's not just therapists. You can find dentists and every other kind of physician that you can think of. So whatever that ache and pain is that's bothering you and you know you need to handle, ZocDoc is your go-to. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/TU. ZocDoc.com/TU. It's free. It's easy. Go for it. So one of the things to look for would be in your circles. Just think about your own life in your own mind, actually. Sometimes our own minds get shut down where that we are silencing ourselves and we won't let ourselves kind of have a diversity of thought. People are talking about colonization. There's a way that our own minds are colonized. We will shut it down so that we stay on the raft, so that we can stay with our team. But what you want to look for is some of nuance. You want to look for, can I disagree with this group of people? Or do I even really understand whatever it is, whatever the policy is, that everyone is so clear, these complex policies and these complex wars. And all of a sudden these people are just like, nope, it's this. Here's the answer. Nope, it's just this. I mean, how could that be? How could that certainty be? The idea being, are you declaring things that you really aren't qualified in a way to know that much about? Can you say, I'm not sure? Can you say, I don't know? Can you hold in a different position? Those are all signs that you're in a healthier collective and that you're building a healthier collective, so that if someone in your group or family or partnership begins to say something surprising and different than the party line, whatever your cultural party line is, that the idea would be to make it safe for them. Oh, wait, you must be seeing something I'm not. Like, you draw that out, you make it safe to disagree, and you make it safe because there's something valuable in what they're saying. They're probably not the only person that feels that way. So let's tune in and really listen. It doesn't mean that you're going to agree or anything like that. But what we're talking about is cultivating safety around you. And that means cultivating it for other people. And then also, it starts inside you of like, you're okay even if you're having these thoughts, or even if you feeling called out by being zipped up and stuff, any of those things that, like, it's not that we're having all these symptoms or problems because that we are problematic. We're having these problems because the world is crazy. The world is in us. It's insecure. It's shaky. And we're having normal biological reactions to a shaky world.
And we can't control all the things that are shaky in the world.
No, which takes you back to what you were doing with the individual.
Right. You can't control it. And so we're not trying to advocate for people not being angry. We're trying to advocate for being, no, but that anger informs you, but it isn't what causes change. Connection is what leads us to change, right? Love is what activates our change. Like when we feel care for other people, we will, with perfect strangers, we're going to do all sorts of things for perfect strangers if we're able to activate that part of ourselves that can feel care. And so anger informs, but it is probably not what is going to be the ultimate change factor.
Okay. Now I'm going to be the system.
All right.
You were doing the individual. Because I could imagine. It's like, oh, hell no, anger. The problem is I think people turn to it too quickly. But sometimes you got to block the streets and burn down the thing and sabotage the pipeline. And I think there's a place for rage and for that kind of like absolute, sometimes violent protest. But what we're advocating for is like, there's 100,000 steps before that also could be effective, but not saying sometimes there are circumstances when that is the right thing to do and that's the thing to do.
But I think you and I
Anna's shaking her head. No,
I think I would disagree on you. I think yes, I'm going to agree with you that, well, no, I'm going to agree with you that sometimes the answer is to sabotage the pipeline or to form a line and to actively, hugely, absolutely. But I would say that if we're doing that in reactive anger, rather than really getting hold of ourselves in a connected sense. I'm not saying get rid of anger. I'm saying let anger inform. Anger can even inspire, but we also have to have a sense of understanding what it is we're fighting for and connecting to. And so when we are forming that sit in, we have done it collectively and we've done it by listening, and we're listening and we're knowing what's happening for the other side, so that when we're speaking to them, we're speaking to what is really there rather than only being in our reactive position. So I am absolutely not an advocate for let's just all hold hands on any level. But I am saying if it's from a reactive place where you don't have access to your frontal lobe, that's the difference, right? When we talk about being in the green and being in anger, or being in the red and blue, if I'm cut off and I'm so self satisfied and I'm living in the blue with my anger, if I'm living highly in the activated red, then I might not be able to have access to that wiser self that could help us stay in connection while we move forward with what's so important to us.
Okay, so then staying on my side for a minute, because I could agree. It's not even that I'm disagreeing. It's more of like I'm thinking of like when you've just had enough, whether it be your family or you or you're in a relationship and it's just too much. And so yeah, your prefrontal cortex is offline. Absolutely. You are flipped out. So I'm just sort of trying to hold that too around how important that is, and that being it's still going to go back to kind of what you're saying of like that's not a shameful place. That is like your body is trying to take care of you. And there's a lot of information in that rage. And if you've told off the politician and publicly or whatever out of anger, like then more power to you. And if that means later, I don't know. I want to hold that sometimes outrageous, outward, uncontrolled, unregulated, wah, sorry, but, I don't know, I just think I wanna hold the place for that, especially as, like you said earlier about how privileged we are. I really like this because I could take the other position, and I know you could take this position, and they're both true. It's interesting because it's been hard for us to talk about it because I think what you're saying is right, that so even the person, like, say, as a gay parent and somebody wants to come and take my kid, and I'm bowing up and, like, try it. And the health of that's why that we have that emotion is to protect our families. So it's like honoring that. And then what? And it might be like I'm thinking about trans families that you move from states like ours that are really persecuting people that are different in this way. Like, in other words, that there's still like you're saying, you can channel your rage, or that you go bring, which is what we've done, brought our strollers and everything into the legislature and parked for hours and hours and hours and just completely filled it up with all of our kids doing protests and so on and so forth. So
I like the healthy disagreement and the healthy agreement, and they're kind of a mixture of both. Because I mean, the truth is, I don't want to let go of that. You touch my child, I'm coming after you.
you just sounded a little soft.
That's always my role, isn't it? I'm a little too soft. But I guess the goal being,
Because you can have fire.
oh, sure. Yeah. That's what I'm saying is I don't want to dampen people's fire. Like, I mean, it took everything I could to stay in that room. I wanted to stand up and yell at everybody that was standing up. So I definitely have fire. And I am absolutely not saying that I'm over the end, always like handling my anger well. That's the opposite. I do think, though, it's when we can tolerate that anger to a point where we can still relate rather than hate. I think what I'm meaning is that if we land only into this polarized, divisive, destructive hate, this where I sit is here and where you sit is evil. And I feel like there's so much being promoted in the world. Like when we talk about the protective system, we talked a lot about it, the black and white, the right and wrong. That's what our body does biologically. And so when we get too activated and we are too scared and too afraid and too angry, we instinctually try to pick a team and get angry and then hate. And we can visit there, but if we live there, it's going to keep getting used against us. And now what we have is a muddled mess of people who have beautiful minds and beautiful souls hating each other. We can't solve our world's problems through an us and them. We haven't survived this long in the world through our better hate department. we need everybody's wise mind to get under control, and we need to hear each other to make these changes in a stable self where we're relating rather than hating, and not to let these people who are, I think, promoting hate.
Oh, totally.
Right. And when
Absolutely.
we feel I love you bringing in the gay children thing because we are totally directly related to that. I can easily feel hate in that department of people trying to come at me in a homophobic way of like, oh my gosh, like I can experience it in this moment if I let myself. I'm just saying if we live there, that honestly, I guess my bigger advocacy is lesson. Now I'm going to turn around. I'm going to get off the individual.
Wait, before you do, wait, because I like you staying there for a second. But I was thinking when you were talking yourself out of leaving and working yourself back into kind of your higher, getting your window of tolerance, widening it a little bit, like, okay, I'm going to sit and do this. That I could imagine if that continues and that you use that information of your anger. So you're either going to leave or fight and know you're going to endure it. But then I could imagine, and just to play it out, that I could imagine you standing and saying something with anger in your voice about whatever it is. In other words, staying engaged and maybe having an impact, even if it has fire. Because again, you have fire.
Thank you. Yes, I
You
do.
you do.
Yeah.
And so I think another way, just that what you're saying is that, like, I love the malignant hate and the being incited. I think all that's true. And I don't like secure relating being seen as nice or being a doormat. It's the opposite. It's like if you can get your mind and your body connected and be deliberate about your action, you're going to be more powerful than, like you're saying, if you're in this reactive place and you're just acting and, you know what I mean, and being driven by that, your lower brain, and that's where you live. So I think we've effectively switched places. But okay. So I was trying to keep you there, but okay, now you were going to switch. Go ahead.
Well, I think going back into like the collective, I think my hope right now, that was part of, our passion, my passion with the book, our collective passion. I just don't want to always speak for you, but I know that is. And even for this podcast is the awareness that the more that we can be aware, when we talk about the 3R spiral of change, at first we have to recognize it, then we have to really go deeper with it. And that is, I think, is to help us all collectively recognize compassionately why, no matter which side of the political aisle you're on, why everyone is so activated, and that it is a human condition instead of an us and them. And that what we need is hope, not hopelessness. And the more we point to hopelessness, which is really how people get us to divide, if you let that side lead, you will have no hope, right? That is the biggest thing that is being promoted is stick with me. I'm the only one that can involve hope. Stick with me because I'm going to give you belonging. Stick with me and I won't shame you. There's these things that are happening out there in the world and in our political and news systems that the more we can recognize those signs, the less they can work on us. And I think that is the big hope for right now, for me, at least for me right now in this podcast is, oh, wait, the reason that site over there looks so crazy and mean and ridiculous isn't because as humans, they really are. And I'm not saying that there isn't.
Some that are.
Yes, there are some that are. There is psychopathy out there. There is malignant inducing hate that people are intentionally trying to do. That exist. But I would say for the majority, and I think psychology research over the decades would support that the majority of people out there in the world are not psychopathic and that they do care, and that I think we differ sometimes less than we are being made to believe. And the more that we buy into hate and division and they're over there are crazy and evil, and if we listen to them, our world's going to fall apart. If we keep buying into that, what's being sold to us, then they really are going to be running our insides. They're going to be running our nervous system, both individually and collectively. And what we want right now is to be able to go, wait, let's hold our own individually and collectively as a group, learn to securely relate and listen as we start to think of solutions. Instead of focusing on the solutions first, your answer is wrong, mine's right. It's like, how do we relate first, just like in a relationship? How do we get to secure relating place and then be able to listen more? And one of the things we have to do is recognize how much we're being manipulated and incited to not be in our higher, wiser self, and that we really can then own our own, tolerate that discomfort, and not so easily be manipulated into that kind of thinking that is going to lead us nowhere. I mean, we can see it's not getting better. And the one way we can get better, I think, is that that's our message, right? So securely relating, learn how to do that so that we quit being so divided and we quit being so polarized.
Well said. I'm not sure that I could or want to add more to it. I think that that's a great summary.
Well, I'm not used to that with you. I'm ready for you to come on back and argue with me. I'm like, what?
No, I did. I mean, I had some other thoughts about like, oh, these things and this and that. Well, I'll tell you one of the thoughts that I had that I didn't say. Is that okay?
Sure.
When you're saying about the psychopathy, and I totally agree. And I love the hope. I love the part you said about hope. I think that's so important. And that it is our job to keep it alive. It's your job as you're listening. I mean, what's our choice? Hopelessness or hope? Like there are things you can do right now, to move yourself into a more secure position, a grounded position to have effect, whether it be the environment, whether it be things that are too big for any one person. Collectively, we can make a difference. Where I was going to go was, I was really, so this is kind of pessimistic, but I've wondered about conspiracy theories and the spreading of this misinformation and, fake news and stuff like that, the idea of fake news. And something that I think that I understand now is that most people that are doing that, I thought that they believed it, that it had been so effective and that they were watching because of algorithms and everything, that they really believed it. And I'm positive that's true. But there's a lot of people that 100% know that it's a political ploy, and they spread it because they're in this game. They're in this, if it can hurt the other side, if my opponent, this is a tactic against my opponent and it works. And so absolutely, I'm going to fan this flame, not because that I'm that upset about whatever the thing is, but because that I know that it can injure my opponent. And that just surprised me. I think I do have some psychopathy, but the idea of intentionally spreading things that aren't true as a way of winning points for my team, it's a hard thing to get my head around.
You know what? I know that research has been really interesting. There's been a couple of different findings that have been interesting and we've contemplated. And I think it comes down to, and we might be diving into a whole nother podcast. So
I know, that's why I was like, I don't think I should say this.
Well, I guess the one thought is that, like, if I really believe in good and evil, if I've been made to believe that that side over there is evil, then I mean, think of this. This has happened throughout history, right? Through anything, that if we can help people believe that some section of the world or some people are evil, then we can help them believe in them being a secure, good person to do bad things or to do things that we wouldn't otherwise do. We wouldn't otherwise do something, right? And I can see myself vulnerable to that if I wouldn't otherwise do it. But I think, but these people, need to.
It makes me a good person.
Yes.
To fight this. Yes. I'm on the side of right.
If I'm fighting for this, so then I'll spread misinformation, because if it takes down.
We got to take these guys down. They are a threat to my country. They are a threat to my family. They are a threat to my community. And more than ever, we're both, both sides are endorsing the other side as a threat, as an actual threat. Like, I think you hit it on the nail. You hit the head on the nail. My metaphors are they're not good today.
Well,
I think I think it was right on.
And that's why the false information is not, it's okay that we even find out it's false and we keep spreading it. But it is also leaders who intentionally, when we were talking about before, the polarizing leaders that are out there in the world, they actually are very repetitive when they research them all throughout time, not just right now. They inflame division. That's the basic goal. They do it by telling lies. And the reason they tell lies is
scary ones.
Right. And
things that threaten you.
And the reason they tell lies and they're okay with it being called out as lies, because then we stop believing in anything. And if we quit believing in anything, right? If we hear a lot
Don't
of,
know who to trust. Don't know who to trust. Don't know what news source to trust,
yeah, if you don't know, then basically,
or scientific article or university. Don't know who to trust.
then you basically entrench those lies into society. Now society now, and then you that's the next thing, is you look for radical change. And since society is so bad, we have to do something radical, and I'm going to activate this, and then I'm going to spread it, and then we have to have radical change so that we can get things under control. And so by doing that, you would jump on any side to get our bodies under control, the fear in our bodies. So then we're going to turn to somebody that is more of authoritarian or polarizing self, even though we may know that they lie, but they're going to get us out of this. And if our bodies are too overreactive and overstimulated, and we either fight, run, or numb out, then it's a lot easier for us to tolerate and be controlled or agree upon things that are not even in our own interest.
Right, because we don't have to, that whole, going back to the virus of certainty, that I'm going to catch that virus and I feel a lot better than like grappling with my leader's foibles. It's much more, nope, I'm 100% with them no matter what, or her, no matter what. The virus of certainty, I'm serious. It's a thing.
Well, and then you have the algorithms that are going to attach to you and are going to give you every piece of information that tells you that your certainty is actually accurate, and that you don't have enough people confronting your certainty. You're surrounding yourself with everybody that would agree with you. And so bringing it back, let's bring everybody's body down. What do we do about it? Right.
Well, can I say one more thing though about certainty, just about the difference? Because there are things that I do feel clear about. As a matter of fact, secure relating, like when I think of myself, this is a grounding thing. I'm not going to inflame anybody, but like if I can imagine like my root going into the ground, if I'm connected to the part of me that is kind of more sacred, that's has been, will always be, like that kind of, divine, as just being a human in the world, as special as every single person is special. Then from that stance, there's not a problem with knowing something, you know what I mean? With intuiting something, with the opposite of certainty isn't uncertainty. So I'm saying like there's a knowing that comes from, for me, it's like in my solar plexus or even kind of in my back. That's a different thing than that sound, that wildy, like that, like, nope, that's just the way it is. Nope. That quick, fast cutting off. That is what I'm calling certainty. That is the thing that is the sign of more primitive thinking. So I just want to kind of separate that out. But I also just calling everybody, like you were wanting to move us into, calling everybody into our grounded, secure, whole-minded, compassionate, connected selves.
Well, which brings us into the next couple of episodes that we're going to do. And that is the kind of, when we talk about recognizing the signs of collectiveness and the collective activation, and trying as to protect your nervous system in terms of taking in more accurate information rather than, sensationalize. And that's for me too, like really trying to do that. But I think the next couple of episodes kind of are going to come back to how do you use modern attachment and neurobiology and this information in a way to help ground ourselves. We want to do that as individuals, and we want to do that in our relationships. And so the more we know how to recognize what's going to activate us particularly, because it's going to be different for everybody, right? The same information isn't going to activate us all in the same direction. So the goal of being able to learn how for you to ground yourself in a secure relating place, and all of us doing that as individuals, is part of the step.
So if you're still with us, it means you're into this material, which means that you will probably enjoy our book that has been worked on for a very long time. It has this and much, much, much more. SecureRelatingBook.com. And we encourage you to pre-order it so that it will be in your hands on May 1st. And you join us. I'm being your social calendar right now. So go to that website, order the book. Then you'll go to, it's on the same website basically, but it's therapistsuncensored.com/launch. And then you sign up for the virtual launch, and then you'll have your book in hand, and you're going to get your favorite beverage wherever you are, and sit back and enjoy with us and celebrate with us, and with a whole host of some of our previous guests. We're going to celebrate this as a community because it was built by community, and we're talking about secure relating in community. So it only makes sense that there's a community that'll be launching this, and you're part of our community. And so we really want you to join us on May 1st at the virtual launch. Please do it.
And some of the people that you've listened to over the years will be joining us. And they've been a big part of our clinical thinking and our process. And several of them have been part of reading chapters. So that's such
David Elliott. So many of you studied with David Elliott or did the attachment study group with me, actually. We've done a few of those. He's going to be here, and many other people. Tina Payne Bryson.
It's such an honor to have them.
Lots of people. So, okay.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you around the bend.
Therapist Uncensored is Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott. This podcast is edited by Jack Anderson.